Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So basically, it says the purpose is to practice using arithmetic operators. Yeah. So it's basically just teaching you guys how to use the arithmetic operators, as well as the input and print function. So these are the two functions that you will have to keep in mind: input and print. Um, yeah. Okay. So let me. So you guys are using Git Bash if you guys are on Windows, but I'm using something different, but it should work exactly the same pretty much. Let me
Hmm.
change my directory real quick. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just do a test or remove test.py. Okay, so you guys are reusing Vim for the majority of the first like half or like the first 25% of the class. You guys won't be able to use IDEs until like after Lab 3, so I will just be using Vim here so that you guys can kind of see it as well. I'm not sure if you guys have already tried using Vim, but it's a little funky. But because it's not something that you're used to, I think usually like with like text editors, you're used to like Notepad or things like Word doc and stuff like that. So this is a little funky because it's a mode-based text editor. But basically, once you open up the Vim program, it'll pop out. It'll look like this, and you won't have a mode. But when you press I, you go into insert mode, and then you can start typing text. Because if you're not, and if you're no like if you don't have a mode, then and try typing stuff, it won't type basically. Like if I try to type, I don't know, like S or maybe not S, like D or something, it won't do anything. You have to be in insert mode in order to do that. So yeah, so you go to insert mode, and then so let's just type our first line of code. It says we're gonna practice using arithmetic operators as well as the input and print function. So we know that if we just say something like 1 plus 1 here, and we don't do anything to this, so to write to the file, you do :w, and that'll save the file basically. So it says that the test.py was written. Let me see if I can make this any bigger. I also have the commands on the Discord. Let me pull it up real quick. So the commands are also in the notes resources page. They're right here. So simple Vim commands. Press I to insert to go into insert mode. :w will save the file basically, and :q quits it. So you should try to familiarize yourself with Vim for the first like half of like the first 25% of this class. So if we just have something like 1 plus 1 here, and we try to run this file, so python3 test.py, it's not going to do anything. The reason why it won't do anything is because um, we're not saying that the Python file should do something. We're just saying 1 plus 1, which doesn't really mean much. Um, what I mean by that is maybe if you want if you want the result of this to show up, you want to use the print function. So you want to print whatever the result of this arithmetic operator or this arithmetic expression is. Um, you want the print function to print whatever the result of that is. So if you do something like this instead, and then you run it, then it actually does it. So what we want to do here is we want to use input, and maybe when we want to take an input, right? So we want to take give a number, right? And maybe you guys have already heard of things like variables. You might have even seen some before. So here I'm just gonna have a variable. I'm just gonna call it my var1, and I'm just gonna set it equal to the result of the input function. So input is a function. Print is also a function. So the input function will just take whatever input is given from the user that's using your program, and it's going to store it into whatever your variable is. So in this case, um, so this string right here is the message that pops up to the user basically. So rather than doing 1 plus 1, I'm going to do my var1 plus 1. So whatever the user gives me, I'm going to do +1 to that. Right. One thing to also keep in mind is input will give you a string type. I'm not sure if you guys have already reviewed the weekly module about like data types, but um, string is a type of data. String is like anything like alphanumeric, but isn't numbers. So, anything like, I don't know, potato one underscore star. This is, a string. It's valid string. But like if you want the number one, this is not the number one. This is the string one. This is the number one, essentially, in Python. So you need to differentiate between different data types. And so input, when it originally takes in the input from the user, it's going to give it to you as a string. So it's going to give you, let's say the user inputs something like one. It's going to give it to you as string one. But you want to take it in as something like one instead. So what you need to do is you need to use the int function to cast whatever my var was into an integer type. Does this make sense? My var is equal to int my var1. I'm casting whatever this right here is. So let's say I put in one. This string one gets casted into an integer using the integer function, and then it's going to be set back into this variable again. And then now that it's an integer type, I can actually add it with another integer, which is like one right here. And so now if I write this file, so I save it and then I quit and I run this. See, so it prompts the message that I gave it. So it says, give me a number. And then now it's waiting for the user to give a number. So let's say I give it like, I don't know, like 27. Then if you press enter, it's gonna enter this into your program, basically, into whatever the input function was waiting for. So yeah, so now we get 28. So this makes your program more versatile because now your program's able to take in user input rather than like hard code something. So you don't have to say like a equals 5 here and then like b equals 2 and then say like a plus b. You can just say like, give me a number and then like give me another number basically. So that users can interact with your program. Um, so this is like a short way of doing it. Give me another number. So you can wrap your input function around, wrap the end function around the input function, and it'll do the same thing. Here, I just did it separately, but it doesn't really matter. So here, I mean, you could hard code, like, a equals 5, b equals 2, and then do like a plus b. But if you want if you want your user to put both numbers, then you can just do this, and then you can just say like my var2, plus my var1. And now if we run this, it's gonna, prompt proof for a number. Let's just go with like 5, and then let's just go with like 18 and 23. So the entire lab1 depends on the input function and the print function. You're supposed to, for example, let's just read it like line by line essentially. For the following problems, choose a number calling the input function to prompt the user for a number. So you shouldn't be hard coding these numbers yourself, like a equals 5 or like b equals 2. You should be prompting the user for a number, and the user will be the one that chooses the number. You should assume the user will enter a valid number required by each problem, thus, you do not need to check for it. So, for like problem 1, for example, it says choose a number from 1 to 20. You can just assume that the user will put a number from 1 to 20. Like they won't like do something funky like -10 or like 0 or something like that, or like 62 or something, right? You can just assume that they'll give you the correct number, so you don't have to check for it, essentially. That's what this is saying. Um, for more information about built-in input function, you can read this. Yeah. So if you would like to know more about input and more about other functions and stuff like that, you can refer to like the official Python documentary, or not documentary, the documentation, and it'll tell you more about like like the type that input returns and everything. Um, so there's a lot of information here. So yeah, for each problem, you're going to use the following prompt: enter a number. So this is the message that you're going to be putting when you are running your program. You should prompt this to your user, and then your user should give you a number. So here, mine says give me a number, but it's supposed to be this. It's supposed to be exactly this. So don't use what I used here. Use this. You can literally just copy and paste this. At the end of a problem, use the print function to display the result as an integer. So you need to display whatever your result is using the print function, and you want to use the built-in int to convert strings to integers. So yeah, I've already gone over that. So this part where it says, use int to convert your strings into integer, the reason why you need that is because, yeah, as I mentioned before, input gives you the string version of whatever is the user inputs, and you want to cast that into an integer type. That's why you need this. You will also need the functions min and max for some parts of this assignment. So there is a function called min and max. So like min is a function, max is a function. Oh, I put a 0 there on accident. Yeah, so these two are functions as well, and you can use these kind of like this, basically. So you put in two numbers, 1 and 2, and the result of this function will be the smallest number that you give it. So if you give it like 1 and 2, this is going to result to 1. If you give it, like 3 and 2, then this is going to result in 2. So that's how the min function works. That's basically how the max function works too. It's just going to give you the biggest one instead. So that's how you use min and max. Other than that, you only need to use arithmetic operations. Yeah. So other than that, this is all you need to complete lab 1. Is just you can't use if statements, you can't use loops, and you can't use string operations. Um, for some people that have already had a little bit of programming experience prior to this class, um, no loops, no if statements, and no string operations. So string operations are things like I don't know. Let's say you had a string like s equals potato, and you want, or like let's say or like 1 or something, and 1 2, and you wanted to get the first character of this or the first digit. um, you can't do like s of 0 or something like that, right? So you can't do this. So that's what it means by string operations. So you should only use like literally just math and input int print min and max, and that's all you need. Yeah, so create a new file called lab1.py, and you can just start doing it. So yeah, literally in problem 1, you can just say, um, you know, uh, enter a number like how he wants you to say it. So enter a number, and then you're just going to be doing whatever it tells you to do. So double the number that the user gives you, add 10 to the result of doubling it, and then divide 2 to the result of adding 10 to it, and then subtract the number that you started with. Subtract this result from the number that you started with. So that's going to be the end of problem 1, basically. That's it. Any questions? That was a lot of information, sorry.
I think I have like a question about like how do you I'm not quite sure how you like go from the Vim thing to
The
I
command
don't know the
line.
proper name like the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so this is called command line interface. Vim is a program
Uh-huh.
basically. So Vim is just a program that runs, and Vim is just a text editor. So yeah, to go from the command line to Vim, you just run the Vim command on the file that you want to run it on. So like ls will list all of the files within a directory. So these are the files within this directory lab1. So I can actually like literally show you this directory using File Explorer too. It's to like basically prove it to you that command line interface is just the exact same as, you know, command line interface is exactly the same as, um, it's the same as user interface. So if I go here and I make a file, so touch, you can use touch to make a file. So if I wanted to touch a file and I said, I don't know, prove uh, CLI.py, right? Look, if I refresh it, here, it's here. So it's the same thing. So this is just a way to ls is a command that shows you what files are within this directory. So the directory that I'm in right now is lab1. to change out of directories, there's a command called cd, change directory. So dot dot will get you out one directory. It's the same as, so dot dot is the same as going back one directory, basically. You want to change it into a directory, you want to type ls so that you know which ones are your directories. For me, the directories are highlighted green, files are they're just not highlighted. So green ones are directories. So that means I can go into a directory called lab1, lab2, lab7, and that's the same here. It proves that CLI, which is command line interface, and user interface is the same. It's just we're trying to teach you command line interface, so that's why we're having you do it this way rather than this way. So yeah, so lab1, so you cd into lab1, and so that brings you into lab1. Then uh, to get into Vim, or yeah, you just type Vim, the program Vim, and then the name of the file that you want to go into. So let's just go into that test file called prove CLI that I just made just now. Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, Vim is a mode-based editor. So right now we're not in a mode at all, so we can't do anything. So let's say we wanted to type some text. Let's just say we wanted to do a simple print hello world, just your typical hello world. First things you usually do. Now, in order to exit insert mode, you need to press escape, and that'll exit insert mode basically. So the escape key will exit insert mode. So now you're not in a mode. So now you can do whatever you want. So now you can do like saving. So as I mentioned earlier in the Discord, the to save you do :W, and you'll see it pop out down here. :W down here. Now you just press enter, and so you wrote to this file called proof CLI. So you saved it basically. So now you can :Q to quit Vim. So now you're back in command line interface basically. Any other questions?
So, are you saying like if we were to exit this and go back into the file, then all of this would be saved?
Yeah. So
Because
we can prove that, right? So I can just run vim prove CLI again, right? And the things that I typed in there should still be in there, right? And they are.
okay, and then can you explain again how to like run the actual
Ah, yes.
thing?
So that's a good question. Yeah. So to run it, you're gonna use I think if you're using Windows and you're using Git Bash, your command is Py, not Python 3, right? So that's what I put on the Discord right here, is that your command might be Py and not Python 3. There's many different ways. There's Py, there's Python, and there's like Python 3. Try all of them. I don't know which one it will be for you. I don't know why they did it
I
this
think it's
way.
Pi
Yeah,
is
for you it might be
though.
Pi.
Yeah.
So for you it might be Pi, but for me it's Python 3. And so then Python 3 and then the name of the file that you want to run. So if I want to use Python 3 in this, boom, that's it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, no problem. And if you want a more in-depth guide of Vim, you can watch this video right here. It literally it teaches you more shortcuts that you can do in Vim. So other than like these three right here, it teaches you a little bit more advanced shortcuts that you can use to make your life a whole lot easier, basically. Yeah. So I do recommend watching this if you would like to get good at Vim and make your life a whole lot easier for the next like 2-3 weeks, basically. Or
All
10
right, I'll
weeks
check it
if
out.
yeah, like 10 weeks if you decide you want to use Vim for the next 10 weeks, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when it gets closer to when lab 3 when everyone starts completing lab 3, I'm going to post a video on VS Code, which is the interactive development environment that I use. Here, let's see. I'll just show you essentially. Code. So rather than using Vim, you can alternatively use something called an IDE, or an interactive development environment, which is this. So you can uh, have a terminal down here while also interacting with your code at the same time, and you can use your mouse because you can't use your mouse in Vim. So yeah. So I will have a video of this later on, closer to the end of Lab 3. And you can choose to stay with Vim. If you love Vim, you can just keep using Vim until the end of time until, I don't know, like week 10 or even in the next class that you're going to be taking if you take like 202. Um, you can choose to try out the IDE, and if you like the IDE, stick with it. I love VS Code. I don't prefer Vim. Vim is good. It's nice, but I prefer VS Code. So, yeah. That's pretty much it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
And then
So,
you're gonna be posting this. You
yeah.
said like you were okay.
Yeah, I'm
Sounds
gonna I'm gonna stop the recording right now, and then I'm going to